Okay, so grips are one of the fundamentals that we want to get right, first of all. The important thing for us to understand is that a lot of people, just through culture, talk about continental, eastern, semi-western, things like that. It's good for you to know what they are, but we want to try and break away from using those terms anymore, unless we're playing with an older client who is sort of stronger in those terms and doesn't really want to change to the new modern terms. So the important thing to understand here is that we have an octagon shaped handle, so 8-sided, and we're going to give basically a name and number to each one of those sides. So the problem that I have with calling grips continental or eastern or whatever is there can actually be an opinion, and I've had more than one time in my life where I've had people say this is an eastern backhand or this is an eastern backhand. I don't know how we can have an opinion on something which should be a fact. Mm-hmm. So what we're looking for here by having numbers and definitions is that we can't really get it wrong, all right? So the important thing to understand here, so if you look at this, if this would be the butt cap of the racket, we would have number 1 would be the top. Now, just for the reference here is that the racket would be held this way, all right? So we're referencing it where the frame is. So the racket would not be held like this, the racket would be held there, and number 1 would be on top of the racket there. So number 1's on top, all right? Assuming this is a right-hander, the first bevel, or the diagonal there, is forehand 2. The flat side of the racket is forehand 3, and the diagonal bevel on the bottom is forehand 4. All right? Going around the left-hand side of the racket, which is the backhand side, we have backhand 2, backhand 3, backhand 4. And you'll see that I've put the bottom one as number 1, because basically if we spun the racket around, that would become the number 1, and then we'd go forehand and back around the other way. So that's how we talk about it. And then the way we measure it is the knuckle of your pointer finger. All right, so this knuckle here, where it's touching the racket, if you think about the base pad that touches the racket, all right? So if I wanted to hold grip number 1, which would be on top of the racket, I would get my knuckle on the top of the racket. So this knuckle here is on the top of the racket, and that would be grip number 1. Now, grip number 1 would only be used by someone who hits a topspin one-handed backhand, okay? So most of your kids, adults, everyone who plays, if you just give them a racket and they just hold it naturally, they're going to hold it like this. So you see that my knuckle is on the side of the racket and the side of the racket is number 3. All right, so most people will hold forehand 3 as a default, all right, which is perfectly fine. It used to be called Eastern forehand. All right, if they're getting better, their knuckle will change from 3 around to 4. That would be semi-western forehand. All right, that's the most common for most of our more advanced players. Should be most of you as coaches will also be using that grip. And then the more people who are extreme, they're actually holding grip number 1, but then hitting on the other side of the racket. All right, so that would be a full western forehand. From our point of view, we want pretty much everyone hitting off 3 unless they're a more advanced player. But the most important one here is backhand. So when we get to backhand, we need to teach them to change grip to 2. So 2 is continental grip, all right, so having that knuckle on the first bevel on the right-hand side. And that grip forehand 2 is used for every single shot in tennis except forehand, all right? When we talk about the backhand side, so backhand 2, backhand 3, backhand 4, that is for our left hand. So when you're using your left hand, it'll obviously be your left knuckle that you'll use. So when you're holding a backhand grip, for example, we would expect the grip would be forehand 2, backhand 3. All right, so that's the most common backhand grip. If you want more topspin, you might drop your left hand to backhand 4. In the same way, if you wanted more topspin, you would drop your right hand to forehand 4 on a forehand. So as you move that grip around, the racket face closes, makes it easier.